A login instance. I'll add the HTTP node in action. You'll get the integration or action a node related to mostly the integration. I'll select the HTTP request node. I'll open node. Here we have three tabs. Configuration is the basic configuration. APIs is the main section, which is kind of APIs is the collection of all the API which we wanted to trigger. Okay. Additional setting is the some additional testing on the node label that we will keep it aside for the time being. We'll focus on the APIs. Okay. As an example, let's say we wanted to trigger the API. Let's say this is the API we wanted to trigger. Okay. Currently, this API is configured. Summary, you can give the description. In the method, you can give what method of HTTP you wanted to select and the URL of HTTP method. In the header, you can give the header part, okay, just like the HTTP header. In the body, there are multiple body type which you can select depending on the requirement. You can select the body. Okay. In the parameter, param is the basically query parameter which you can select. You can select this section as well for selecting the parameter. Otherwise, you can directly uh, give the query parameter in the URL as well, just like as a normal API endpoint. You can modify the response of the HTTP by these two options. If you think the HTTP response which we are going to hit is going to return the attachment, then you can make this checkbox true. Then your attachment will be saved in the system. If you wanted to include the response header and status as well in the response, then you can select this. I'll first go in the basic section, which is the main section for hitting the API. I'll currently this is the default URL is given. You can click on the test this step. You can test this API. I'll click on this test this step. You can test this API. This is the response of this HTTP. Here you will get the status tags, and this is the duration of this API response time. Okay. Let's say, for example, we wanted to make the collection of all the API of ServiceNow. Okay. So there are two ways to know the all the APIs of ServiceNow. Is first you go on the ServiceNow page, you'll get the API. Second is you can use the chat GPT as well. You simply ping with good prompt that return me all the API, all the important API of ServiceNow. Chat GPT will respond to you. Okay. I'll go on the portal to find out first all the API of ServiceNow. This is the my instance of ServiceNow. I'll go. ServiceNow has REST Explorer, which will which can give the REST API detail which we wanted to trigger. Okay, let it reload the page. Let's say we wanted to trigger these basic API, which is the table API, and the first API which we wanted to test it, retrieve records from the table. If you wanted to retrieve multiple record from ServiceNow, this is the API you can use. Okay, I'll try to test this first API, how you can use the SN connector for getting the record from ServiceNow. Okay, let's say the table which we wanted to test is incident, and I'll leave all the parameter as of now as a blank. I'll click on this send. It will response 200 and this is the response body of ServiceNow. Okay, and this is the API detail. I'll copy this API detail. I'll feed the same detail. This is the API detail. I'll feed same detail in snconnector. Okay, so instead of default API, what we can do in the URL, I'll mention this URL. Okay, in the get method is get. Here you can verify this detail. HTTP method is get. URI this is header content type application except this one. Last two no need to fill. I'll go in the header. In the header section, I'll make it true. Will activate the header section. These two are provided as a default header, which is part of this API as well. So no need to feed any new header. It just you need to enable it. I'll put the brief description for everyone for this API. This is the table API, and this API basically we are using retrieve records from the table. In the basic, I'll mention retrieve records from table. Okay. I'll test this API. This will give the error invalid URL. Let me check what is invalid URL. Currently, basically, once you configure this API, this is your API name here. This is APIs you considered as a collection. Out of collection, this is one of the APIs. Its name is default. Okay. You copy this default API, come in the configuration. Here, select operation, you need to select the custom. Okay. And then you can give the default. Okay. And you need to test this API. Invalid URL, it is again coming. Okay, so I think the get is mentioned, that is why it is coming as invalid. I'll remove this get. I'll again test. Okay, this time the error is user is not authenticated, required to provide, because in the configuration, this is the top level configuration. Here we have one field credential to connect with. Here we need to provide the credential of ServiceNow. Okay, of the services for which we wanted to connect. What we can do, I'll close it. I'll save it here. Okay, we need to create the ServiceNow credential first. Here we have tab for adding the credential. I'll click on add credential and scheduler. Here we have lot of ServiceNow credential, but I'll try to show you how you can capture the credential. How can you save the credential of ServiceNow? Here you will get two kind of credential which ServiceNow supports: basic credential, and we have the OAuth credential. Okay, uh, any one of you you can use. Let's say we wanted to use basic credential. Okay, I'll click on add. I'll close this. This is my instance detail. My username is admin. My password is something something, and my subdomain here is dab7ben. I'll click the correct domain. This domain. Yeah. What is my password? I'll try to check my password. Okay, I have entered my password detail as well. I'll try to uh, save changes. I'll click on the save changes. What it will do, it will try to save the credential as well as it will try to test your credential as well, whether this credential is correct or not. Okay, I'll save it. Okay, this is the response. In the result, you will get the test okay. Once you try to save the credential for any node, it will first try that credential, whether your information is correct or not. If it is not correct, it will give test not okay or false. Okay, and the saved in the database is the ID which is saved in the database. This is your credential ID. Now going forward, you simply need to use this credential ID, and uh, system will pick or your credential from this ID only. Okay, I'll close this. I'll open this HTTP request node again. I'll click on this. As soon as you click on this credential input box, the credential window will be opened. Here we have used the add credential for adding the new credential. As soon as you add it, then in the my credential you'll get that credential. Okay, I'll show the complete window. This is the credential we have created. Okay, if you want, currently it is showing 7 credential. You can refresh it as well. Okay, this is the credential it is showing. You can drag and drop credential here, or you can manually type as well. I'll close this credential window. I'll try to test now this API again. Okay, this API is response is 200, its status text is okay, and this is the duration of API. This time the API is successful. You have successfully integrated ServiceNow API, get record detail, one of the API of ServiceNow, table API for fetching the detail with SN connector. Okay. Now the option currently the name of the API is default here. If you wanted a better name here, you can give the better name as well. But I wanted to show you that this is not only way to manipulate the API. Okay, there are other method as well. You can feed this data. Okay, for example, you can directly manipulate the JSON only. What we can do, I'll click on this JSON here. You'll get the same JSON which you can directly manipulate. This is basically this default or anything, the complete node. This complete node is one JSON structure, and that JSON structure you can get from by clicking on JSON button. Okay, for this particular, I'll click on this particular JSON only API section and JSON, and will try to modify the API detail directly from the JSON instead of feeding the data from the form. Okay, I have copied this JSON from by clicking on that JSON button, and this is the detail. Okay, here is the default name of that API. You can make it some good name of the API. For example, get table records. Let's say retrieve table from uh, ServiceNow by using table API. Okay, parameter is get, and all other parameter if you wanted to change, you can directly change. You can copy this JSON again, and you can directly paste just this JSON here only. Okay, this will create another API. Okay, similar to default API. What we can do, so okay, now if you check the property here, you will get two property. Okay. Default for the time being, I'll remove here. I'll I'll keep only get detail record which we just created here. Okay. I'll close this. I'll save this complete workflow and let's see uh, now what will happen. Okay, so this is the API. Again, default you cannot delete because it is the default provided by the system. You can modify it definitely, but you can enter your more APIs on the API section. Okay, so uh, the new API which we just tested, I have renamed it and entered a new API, get table record, and we tested it. Now you can, once again, we can test it. Okay, invalid operation because now if you wanted to trigger this API, we need to trigger this API. So in the configuration operation which we wanted to trigger is the get table record. And here is the API. Okay. We can test more API from REST Explorer. What I'll do, instead of retrieving record from ServiceNow like multiple API, I'll try to retrieve one API only, one record API. Okay, table will be incident, and let's say record is I'll copy this ID of this. So let's say now I wanted to test API for returning a single record from ServiceNow. Okay, I'll go and click on the send, and here is 200. Okay, response. This is the API detail of ServiceNow. I'll copy this API. So again, there are two methods. We can directly work with the JSON, or I can directly create the property. Okay, either way you choose. I'll click on the property and I'll create a get table and record. Any name you can give. I'll try to add it. Okay, this is the detail we just had entered. You can uh, check in and check out again. This was the endpoint of that API. Method is get, and the summary is just a description for explaining what this API is doing. Retrieve a record. Okay, I can manually retrieve a single record from ServiceNow. I have updated the information. Currently, this is the uh, endpoint of API, ServiceNow API. Table is incident table, and this is the hard-coded sys ID of ServiceNow record. Okay. Now I wanted to test this API. I'll copy the name of this API. We'll go here in the operation. I'll give the get table record and I'll click on this test. Okay, this is the record returned from this API. Okay, I'll test more API. One post API we can test. Create a record. Quickly, I'll feed data incident, and let's say test from REST Explorer. Okay, so this created. Okay, I'll copy this API in the property. I'll create record. Once I'll click, this will create one placeholder where we simply need to feed the detail. Instead of get, I'll select post, and the API is this one, which I just copied. Okay, this time we need to pass the body as well. In the body, I'll select the input parameter. In the body, there are multiple types. Currently, we are testing the using field value, where you can give the field key value kind of. Input field, you can give name. Name should be the backend name of that field in ServiceNow. Let's say we wanted to create a short description, and value is test by snconnector. Okay, no other parameter is required. I'll for testing again we need to test this one. I'll go and I wanted to test, so I'll give in the operation this API and I'll click on this test. Your record is created. This is the incident number which is created. You can go and verify. Let me open the new window. Okay, I'll go in incident table. I'll remove all the filter. Two record you can see, one which we created from REST Explorer and second from the SN connector. Here you can see this is the record ID which is created. Here you can verify again. This is the same record number which is created. So this is how we created three APIs of ServiceNow. Okay, I'll close it. I'll currently these not saved. These are the unsaved changes in the workflow. I'll click on the save button, which is on the top right side. I'll save and will save the complete this HTTP uh, collection. So now you have the API collection, which currently contains 4 API, okay, uh, which you can test. Your 3 API your 3 API are live currently. Default is inactive. Better to keep only those API which active, which you are using. Otherwise, you can make it inactive so that the size of the JSON, size of this HTTP schema will be little bit less, which will speed up your loading time. Okay, this what you can create more API as many as you want. You have complete freedom to create the API. I have shown you two way to create the API. One is from the property where you can directly create the property. It will create one placeholder, and second you can directly manipulate the JSON schema. Okay, just wanted to show you one more thing. For example, now if you test see this JSON, I'll copy this. This time, if you check the JSON, you will get all the API which you just created. Get table record, get table. You can completely manipulate all these API from the JSON directly, which is the developer friendly. If you do not want a UI, just wanted to handle from the JSON, you directly feed this data. Okay. Otherwise, we have the UI as well. Okay. So now your HTTP collection is ready. This is how we will use the HTTP node. Second, I wanted to show you that not only As of now, we tested this API simply by clicking on the test this steps, and we are able to trigger the ServiceNow API. Now, this was the manual trigger. You can trigger this HTTP request node from external system as well. If you right click on this HTTP request node, the last option is API endpoint. You can copy this API endpoint, okay, and let's say I wanted to trigger this endpoint from Postman. I'll go in the Postman. Whatever I have copied from by right clicking on the node, I have just pasted here. Method, you need to select the post. Okay. I'll click on the send button. This will give the error unauthorized 401 error state. I'll go in the authorization section. In the auth type, I'll select bearer token. Now from where we can copy the token. When you log in the system, uh, you clicked on the login and sign up button. Again, you can click on this. This contains your email ID by which you are logged in the system, and it contains your the token as well. You can click. This will copy your token on the clipboard. Same token you can use in the bearer token in the Postman. I've just pinged it. I can test it. Once you hit this API, result will be kind of some small number, which is the job ID, which is triggered. Okay, uh, you cannot directly trigger the API. Once you trigger the API, one job number will be created. That job number is kind of like will be parked in the queue, which will later processed by the system. Okay. Okay. So, but here you trigger the API. Okay. Where we can check, I can reload it. So here we have two sections, editor and data. Editor, we have just seen the example of the HTTP trigger. I can click on the data. Here is all the data which we are creating, like all the workflow which we are creating, it will be saved here. If we are executing some node, the data will be here. If we are uploading some files in the system, here will be my file, and here the schema collection. Okay, the node, this is the ID of this workflow. Okay, I'll go in the executed workflow. In the Postman, this was the job ID number 27. I'll go and we'll see job ID is the 27. Okay, the workflow name is the default, and the workflow ID is this ID, which is same, which it is the same ID which we have in the browser. So your workflow is triggered, and this is the creation time. You can expand this here, and you can get the output of this node. This is the same output which we were testing from the manual, but this time you trigger this node from outside of snconnector, means from anywhere. So the point is, as soon as you save any node in the system, it is live basically. It is exposed by the API, and you can consume it from the outside of snconnector as well. You simply need to trigger the post API, whatever URL it is giving. You simply need to copy that URL and need to paste here. You can trigger here. It will trigger one job ID, which will ultimately trigger. System will pick that job ID and it will execute your node. Okay, so I have shown you two way. First is the manual trigger. Second is from the API. We have one more trigger you can say we can trigger this workflow. It's the test workflow, which is just button available as soon as you save the workflow. You can click on the test workflow button and you can test your API. The simple point is you need to uh, place some trigger as well for triggering from this test workflow button. So I can just manually manual trigger we can add here, and I can save it, and I can click on this test workflow button. It will trigger the same API, and that's it. Okay, I can test the response. This is the execution ID, WFC workflow context. This is the ID of workflow context, which is capturing the output of this execution. I can go in the data and I can test that execution. This was the last execution. I'll reload it, and here is the 29. This is the workflow execution ID, okay, which is capturing the execution. First is the manual trigger, which is returning the empty output, and second is the HTTP node. Okay, I'll return back to here. I'll remove this temporary. It is not needed as of now. We can test this node by clicking on the test this step only. So that manual trigger is not required as of now. I just wanted to capture one more aspect of this API of this HTTP trigger or any node on platform. So if you click as of now APIs in the APIs collection, if you notice, I have hard coded the URL. Okay, same with here as well. I have hard coded the sysid here. But in normal production scenario or in real scenario, we cannot hard code it. It need to be a dynamical way to place the sysid, the sysparam limit dynamically on the URL. Okay. Similarly with the create record, ultimately here we have used the body, but not anything in the URL, so it is okay. But in the get table record, I have used this query parameter dynamically, and in the get table record, I have used this sysid. Okay, so how to place the dynamic parameter, or how to use the scripting or dynamic things in the endpoint or in the API form, complete form. Okay. So for this case, get table record, here we have used the query parameter in the endpoint directly. Instead of this, we can use, you can remove it from here. In the parameter, I can query parameter, sysparam limit, I can use 1. I can make it true, and I can change the value of this. It is the same thing. Either you can directly use the query parameter in the endpoint, or you can use the parameter section in the API. I'll try to test it again. Okay, I have to use this operation in here. Then it will return one record. It is the response. I can change the count as well. If you notice, here we have only one record. Okay, you can change here value 2, then 2 record will be returned from ServiceNow. Now 2 record are returned. It is the array of object. Okay. This is one way. You can place the dynamic parameter. So here we, instead of using in the URL, I have directly used the parameter. Okay. What, let's say you do not want it to use the parameter, you simply wanted previous way only. So in the query parameter, I'll use sysquery. I'll disable this. In the basic, I'll instead of the way we were testing earlier, I'll click on this. This is the same thing. But now I wanted to place, replace this parameter dynamically. What we can do, here we can use the property, okay? In the property, if you notice, these like summary, method, URL, they are the property of this particular form, okay? You can insert one property here, let's say limit. Okay, you can do click and here limit. This, so you created a new field basically, okay? Instead of this field, you can place this value here, okay? Either the complete one or maybe some number only. If you decided that you'll use the limit and place the complete query in this limit field, here what you can do, now I'll show you by making the URL. How can you make this URL? Okay, so how to dynamically use this field? I'll show you how to dynamically prepare the URL. Okay, so no need to use this parameter or anything. You can directly append query in the URL directly. Okay, so for example, let's say currently your your URL is this one, and you created new field limit with currently value as this one. Earlier, the expected format of this URL is okay. What you can do in this URL, I'll now use simple JavaScript templating. Okay, template literal of JavaScript I'll use. What we can do, I'll place this here. I'm using simple JavaScript. I'll place this backticks here. Here I'll put some configuration which I'll explain. For the time being, you just consider that config is one global variable. Okay, here is the name. The this this complete JSON is stored in the config. I'll go in a config dot. Inside config we have one API section. I'll go in a API section. Inside API we have get table record. I'll select this. This is the object hierarchy basically. And inside this get table record we have limit filter. Limit field. It is same thing which we were testing earlier, but now we have dynamically created the URL of API. Instead of now hard-coded URL, it will dynamically pick any value which we are giving in this limit parameter, in this limit field of the API. I'll use this. I'll I'll try to test it. This input not found, not defined. This as of now you can ignore, but as of now you can consider that now API is picking the dynamic URL. Okay, currently it is showing two value. You can now whatever you wanted to change, you can change it. Okay, now it is returning only one record. Instead of giving the complete phase, you can give like this as well. Then you simply need to give the number only. Okay, this is the same thing. Now it is returning only one record.